attention to detail and her technique is superb. So, of course, I recognize some things in the substance. But to me, that's pleasing. You know, it's like she and Julia Ducournau also with Titane. They're like my daughters, you know. And maybe I'm very pleased that they're continuing work.
Hi, David. We're absolutely thrilled to have you with us for this new episode of Conversation. We're a very big fan of your work at Views, so thank you very much for being here.
No, thank you. I like your place here. It's very, very congenial.
Yeah,
I could live here.
A chill place.
Yeah, thank you.
Before drowning you with my hundreds of questions, I want to ask you something very simple.
Sure.
How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm good, and I enjoy being in Paris very much.
How's Paris to you?
Well, I've been coming to Paris since 1971, so it's very familiar to me and very congenial. I have a lot of friends here, and I get more and more every year, so it's really lovely. And therefore, to have this retrospective at the Cinémathèque Française is really very special for me, you know, because French cinema has always been a huge influence on me. In Toronto, I'm living halfway between Hollywood and Paris, you know, and I feel the influence of both places on my cinema.
I was lucky enough to be at the Cinémathèque for the screening of your latest movie, The Shrouds. And when you were on stage just before the movie, you threw some words in French. How's your French?
Pas mal, c'est pas mal. Pas grand-chose, mais ça, you know, ça marche.
Talking about the Shrouds, your latest movie co-produced by Saint Laurent, you work with a French legend that we interviewed at Views, Vincent Cassel. How did you choose and why did you choose Vincent Cassel for this role in The Shrouds?
Well, it's interesting, of course, that a lot of people say that in the movie, Vincent Cassel looks like me, or I look like him. And I have to say, I often say, I didn't cast him because of his hair, you know. The way he wears his hair in the movie is a little similar to mine, so. But he did know, I've worked with him, I had worked with him 2 times before that, and we got along very well. I have great respect for his charisma and his professionalism, and I was very interested to have him play this lead role. And he knew that it was somewhat autobiographical. It concerns a man whose wife has died, and he is dealing with his grief about his wife's death. And so he knew my wife, actually, because of the other 2 movies. And so he felt that he was really playing me. Obviously, it's a fictional version of me, but, and so he was watching me very carefully, how I move, how I talk, because the way I speak is not the way Vincent normally speaks. He speaks much more quickly and aggressively. And so, all in all, it was a very lovely, interesting experience for both of us, really.
Amazing.
And I must say, he said that this movie, The Shrouds, he has the most dialogue he's had in any movie. There's a lot of talking in the movie.
It is.
And he's very good at it.
Amazing. Karsh, the character that he plays, is always really nicely dressed.
Yes.
He has nice clothes. How did you collaborate with Saint Laurent? I saw that Anthony Vaccarello was the costume artistic director.
Yeah.
How did you collaborate on the costumes with Saint Laurent?
Well, it's an interesting collaboration, different from anything that I've ever done before. And of course, Vincent wears basically Saint Laurent clothes, a variety of them. But and we discussed, you know, with Vaccarello, the fact that not all the characters would be wearing clothes by Saint Laurent. And I think at a certain point there was a discussion of, could Saint Laurent do clothes that were not Saint Laurent clothes, you know, the real costumes and so on. But eventually the decision was that the characters who were the kind of people who would wear very fashionable clothes. They could wear Saint Laurent, but not all the characters would. For example, Diane Kruger wears the character does not is the opposite of high fashion, you know. So she's wearing like work clothes, jeans and stuff, and very deliberate. That character deliberately is anti sort of fashion, really, in her. So it was a discussion about all of those things. Where would make sense for Saint Laurent to get involved in the design and the making of the clothes. And it was a very close collaboration between Vaccarello and his people and my costume designer, Ann Dixon, who was responsible for all the costumes in the movie, including the extras and the people who would not be wearing Saint Laurent. So it worked very well. I mean, it was really a very lovely collaboration.
It was really a team reflection with their team, your team, and how you work in your vision of the costume for this movie.
and it's it's important for the actors too. The clothes really change who they are, and define the characters. The actors don't feel like they're the characters until they're wearing the clothes that character would wear.
So interesting. As I told you, I was lucky enough to be at the screening at the Cinémathèque. And just as you said, you also said there that it has autobiographical elements maybe in the movies.
Yeah.
Can you go a bit deeper on that?
Yeah, I mean, the character played by Vincent is things that I am not. He is a tech entrepreneur. And he owns, not only does he own a restaurant, but he owns a cemetery, which is of his own design. So obviously I haven't, although maybe I should be in that. It sounds like a good business, maybe better than the film business, I'm not sure. But on the other hand, he is using his entrepreneurial creativity to deal with the death of his wife and his grief at that death. And so he creates a cemetery where the corpse of his wife, the people who are buried there, wear these shrouds, are wrapped in these shrouds that he has developed that are high-tech shrouds that are basically they're cameras basically. Mm-hmm. And so it's like becomes the cinema of cemeteries, or cemetery cinema, one or the other. So that's basically the structure of the movie.
How did you come up with this idea of the shrouds? Because it seemed so relevant and so plausible.
Yeah, it's totally plausible, and the technology is there. I mean, those shrouds could be created if anybody wanted to.
Okay.
So if anybody in your audience would like to own a cemetery that uses these shrouds, we can make a deal. It's possible.
You have the patent.
I own the patent, and they're my. I really think I could go into because the character is thinking not only will it be one cemetery in Toronto, my hometown, and his, but that he will in different countries establish these very interesting, strange cemeteries where you can have an app on your phone where you can see the body of the dead person who is the loved one of your family. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds odd, but it does come from my own feelings. When my wife was being buried, I thought I would like to get into the coffin with her because I couldn't bear to be separated from her. Mm-hmm. And obviously you can't do that because you would die. Yeah. But the second best thing, I thought, well, what if I could see her? And it sounds maybe grotesque and it sounds maybe morbid, but actually, if it comes out of intense love and of physical love, a man and a woman, I don't know how many people on earth would want to do this. But obviously some people say to me, would you do that? If you had thought of it, would you have done that with your wife? And I said, yes, I would have.
I think it would be more than we expect. More people than we expect.
Yeah.
More broadly, how do you imagine those concepts, and how do you still make them so relevant?
Well, I'm really just reacting to the world as it is around me. People, for example, used to say that Videodrome was very prophetic, you know, the future of the internet is right there. And that was made how many years ago, you know, 1982. But it wasn't, I don't think of art as prophecy, really. And it's not my desire to predict things. There are some science fiction writers who take great pleasure in saying, I predicted satellites, I predicted this, I predicted that. But that's never been of interest to me necessarily. If after the fact it happens, okay, it's interesting. But it's like, as an artist, you have these antennae, you know, like an animal insect, and you are sensitive to the zeitgeist. You're sensitive to what's there already. I'm just seeing what's already there, but most people aren't noticing. And so as I thought about an interactive television in Videodrome, before the internet, before, you know, but I felt it was already there. I mean, it was in the air. It was obvious that it was going to happen.
I have this question in my list, like, can you feel you can predict the future? You kind of answered, but like
The answer is no more than anybody else who is very attuned to things, you know. And I mean, we're already, because of the political situation in America and around the world, people are spending a lot of time now trying to predict the future because they're afraid, you know.
Yeah.
But my so-called predictions don't come out of fear. They come out of some kind of love, really, affection for what's going on. And so I can fuse with it and see it. And of course, for a film that's about what you might think is a very dark subject, it's very funny. I mean, The Shrouds, as you know, is a funny film. And the audiences everywhere recognize that, you know. Maybe they're surprised, but it's not just a dark drama, sci-fi thing. It's a comedy also.
Yeah.
And I would say, in a weird way, a romantic comedy, my version.
It is very romantic. When I think about The Shrouds, something struck me is the terminals in the cemetery. They feel so real. You can like check in with an app.
Yes.
Like, how did you come up with this idea of the terminals, the grave, kind of
Yeah.
digital grave?
It all comes out of the concept, you know. If the idea is that people come to the graveyard to connect spiritually with the dead, you know, with their to be where people physically have ended up. And so if you just take that one step further and you say, but I want to see them, so how do you see them? Well, these days, I mean, 15 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have had the idea of a cell phone and an app, but now, of course there's an app. I mean, what else would there be? And then there's a screen, like an iPad in the tombstone. Now, very much around the world, there are people put photos of the dead people and the loved ones on them. It's not so common in North America, but in many countries it is. So to have a screen that shows you really what's in the grave is, to me, just one step further. And then to control it with your app, well, of course, because you might want to see what's going on in that graveyard when you're 1,000 miles away, you know. I could do it right now, you know.
Yeah, it feels like it exists already.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what happened with Videodrome. It felt like to people that it actually existed.
Yeah.
And as I say, the technology is definitely there. So if anybody wanted to do it, it's doable.
Let's make some money.
Think about it.
Creativity is a very trendy topic. Haven't been creative for over like half a century.
Oh, that hurts.
Sorry.
That hurts. Oh, yeah, okay.
How do you stay inspired? How do you stay creative?
It's just a natural impulse, I think, for some people. And I think actually for everybody, really. If you have children, if you've ever seen children, if you grow up with children, they're immediately creative. They're always creating things, little scenarios with their little cars or the little dolls and whatever else. There is that desire to have some control and make things up and invent things. And it starts very young. And I think people forget it, when they get older and they get involved in the work and the competition and the pressure and the money, and they forget all that stuff. But I often say, we on the film set, we must never forget that we are children, pretending to be other people, putting on mustaches, putting on funny clothes, saying our names that are not really our names. It's really playful. Even in a very dark movie, it's still very playful and very childlike. So to me, that's not a strange thing that I should continue that. I think it does continue if you don't allow it to be suppressed by your circumstances, you know.
Amazing, very interesting. Inside your creations, of course, you explored the relationship between humans and tech and technology. Why is that such a recurring theme in your work?
Well, there's always been tech, you know, for humans. I mean, we've never accepted the world just as it is. It's always a question of trying to control things, shape things, change things, and that inevitably means technology. And, you know, in the 1940s and 50s, people were afraid of technology in a way. You know, there was all the science fiction. It was War of the Worlds, you know, there was weird, incredible technology from outer space, from aliens. And technology was an inhuman, non-human thing that was a threat. But to me, it was always obvious that technology was very human. It was an extension of our bodies, you know, the phone is an extension of your voice, of your ear. Weaponry is an extension of your fist, of your hand, you know, throwing rocks and stuff. Now we're throwing bombs and rockets, but it's all us. So I thought that technology is a mirror of us. It shows us what we are, and technology, therefore, as one would expect, does fantastically beautiful, wonderful things, and also the most horrible, hideous atrocities. And that's just us, that's us, and technology is the same.
When you think about like scanners, Videodrome, or Existence, and what's happening now, when I think about Elon Musk's Neuralink, when they put chip in your brain to control objects, do you think, okay, oh, I was right like 40 years ago, I knew it would happen, or?
Well, I think Elon Musk has stolen many things from me. He should pay me a percentage. No, I don't think that way. I mean, it's there are a lot of people who have, of course, been aware of it, and a lot of science fiction writers have done many of those things, you know. So it's not a surprise, really.
Okay. Some of your movies, some of your films weren't immediately appreciated when they came out. I think about Crash, for example. You faced a backlash when it came out, and now it's considered a true classic.
Yes.
How do you reflect on that now when you think about those times?
Yeah, Crash was a fantastic experience. We showed it at Cannes in 1996, 1997, and we were attacked by the press. It was a huge scandal. They really wanted to kill the film. They killed me. It was pretty exciting. And I was pretty happy with that, you know, because I was very happy with the movie. I was surprised, though, because the novel had come out, you know, 15 years earlier, 20 years earlier than the movie. And it was a well-accepted novel. It had, people knew about it. So I didn't think that the movie would get such a huge reaction. But, you know, the thing that you want the least when you make a film or you're an artist is no reaction. You know, so even an extreme reaction like hatred is not bad. It's not bad, and it's true. I mean, we showed a 4K version of Crash in Venice at the Venice Film Festival a few years ago. The audience was very young. They were fine. You know, they had no problem with it. To them, it was just a normal movie. So if you can survive the initial attack, you might find that your work has a new kind of generation that accepts it in a way that the old one could not.
How do you survive when it happens, when you face that kind of backlash?
Well, my sense of humor, you know. I mean, that's why I think humans have evolved a sense of humor to survive, to help them survive the absurdity of human existence. That's my feeling about it, really.
You've inspired generations of artists. For example, French director Coralie Farja mentioned your influence on her work for The Substance.
Yes.
Have you seen the?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah. What did you think
Well, I
about
liked it a lot, and I think I had liked her earlier film, Revenge. Her attention to detail and her technique is superb. So, of course, I recognize some things in The Substance. But to me, that's pleasing. You know, it's like she and Julia Ducournau also with Titane. They're like my daughters, you know. And maybe I'm very pleased that they're continuing work. And to be an influence, especially a benign influence, a positive influence, one that inspires people, and I've heard this, it's lovely, it's beautiful, because there's no guarantee that that will happen for any artist, you know.
Does it feel even better to see like those films, like The Substance, Titane, receive like so much success?
Yes.
And they've been influenced by your work?
Yes.
Is it even more special for you?
That
it's not just an influence, it's successful movies.
Oh, yes, yes. No, I'm totally jealous. I might,
you want to get on stage with
suppress all young filmmakers. They're too competitive. It feels to me like a further justification. I mean, they were getting prizes and nominations, for example, at Cannes or the Oscars this year for The Substance that I never got. You know, being a Canadian, Toronto, I kind of like the outsider role, actually. It suits me, you know, I don't mind it. I take a lot of strength from it, actually.
I want to also talk about the humor in the movies. We mentioned it a couple of times, but yeah, in The Shrouds, one of the first scenes is the date of Karsh
Yes.
with another woman, and I found the scene so like really hilarious. Why do you always put a bit of humor or a lot of humor in your movies?
Well, as I say, I mean, even as I think humor is necessary to survive your life, I think it's therefore my movies are a reflection of life, the way I think humans live, and therefore humor has to be a part of it. I can't imagine a life without humor, and therefore I can't imagine a cinema without humor. It's basically that.
You always had the freedom to express your vision, to put what you want in your movies. In an industry often focused on numbers, budgets, box office stats, how do you protect and keep that freedom?
Yeah. Well, that freedom was never given to me. It was always fought for. I always had to fight for it. And there have been times when my films have been censored, cut. Crash was released in a version that was 10 minutes shorter than my version. You know, when people talk about, and now we'll show you the director's cut. For me, there is only the director's cut. The other cuts don't exist, you know. But no, you have to fight for it. And I've walked away from some interesting productions that would have maybe been very popular because I knew that given the people, it's all about the people that you're working with, you know, is it studios or not, your freedom is not taken for granted. You can't take it for granted. So I've had to fight all my career, and it's partly choosing the people that you're going to work with. I've had Final Cut technically for many years, but not at the beginning, you know. So that's one of the things that people know about. They've heard about Final Cut, what that is. So it's a struggle, and you have to be strong enough, and you have to decide when to compromise, if you want to compromise. What kind of compromise will it be? Sometimes it's a budgetary one. Sometimes you're working with, for example, when I was doing Naked Lunch with Jeremy Thomas, who's a wonderful producer and very supportive of his directors, we went to Morocco. We went to Tangier with William Burroughs. He hadn't been there for 17 years. It was fantastic to see him go there and meet Paul Bowles, another great writer. They had been friends, sort of friendly enemies. It was fantastic. And we thought we would shoot part of the movie in Morocco. And then the Gulf War happened, and we could not get insurance to fly there. So Jeremy thought that was the end of the movie. And I said, you know what, Jeremy, Interzone, which is what we were trying to create, is kind of a fantasy of Morocco. It's not the real Morocco. It's not like a documentary of Morocco. I said, we could create that in Toronto. You know, we put a camel on the road. We put, you know, some people with donkeys and stuff. we can create the real version of Interzone that is in the novel as opposed to Morocco. And so, was that a compromise? It ended up being great. It ended up, I think, making it better because I might have been very seduced by the reality of Tangier, and instead of focusing on the fantasy version of Tangier. So it's a compromise, but in the end, it's not a compromise.
You made the film. Like,
And I made
you
the
found a
film,
way to,
yes.
to make the film.
Yeah.
Wow. Our audience is relatively young, and I'd love to hear your recommendations for those just getting into cinema. If you have like 4, 5 films that you could recommend to our audience.
You mean films that I haven't made?
As you want.
I only recommend my own films. No, I've seen so many films, of course, and I'm sure you have too. It really depends on the person that you're recommending it to. There's no universal thing. I mean, I love Fellini. I love the movie 8½. I love La Dolce Vita. And some filmmakers might respond very much to that. Of course, it's a very Italian sensibility. But then I'm talking about films that were a big influence on me in the past. And then, but then there's Bergman, Swedish, dark, although I understand that on his film sets, it was very funny. There was a lot of laughs, a lot of humor, even though people would never imagine that Bergman would be funny,
Yeah.
but he was. That's a totally different kind of sensibility. And some young filmmakers might really respond better to that, his filmmaking, than the Fellini version of film. So I would really, the 1 or 2 times that I've done some teaching with, or consulting with young people at the Canadian Film Institute, I need to know what they're interested in. And often it's very current things, very, intense things right now. Is it Me Too? Is it woke? Is it anti? All of those things, which didn't exist when Fellini was working. So I can't I'm afraid I cannot do a universal, you must see this film,
Okay. And
it's a very specific, bespoke, you have to shape it to the person.
I definitely understand. And what advice would you give to a young person who would start filmmaking?
Well, the temptation always is to say, get another career, because it is tough these days, though, for independent filmmaking. You can't even say, it's okay if you want to make Hollywood films. If that's what you want, go ahead. Don't worry about that it's not cool enough or whatever. Go make a Hollywood film. But the industry is in great flux right now. It's in great disarray because of the pandemic, because of Netflix, because of streaming series. Everything is all confused, So it's basically, I think, and it's sometimes tough for young people to hear this, but I say you have to be very honest with yourself about what your talent is and what it is not. What are you good at and what are you not? As a director on the set, I'm not good at everything. I need a good cameraman. I can shoot film. I shot my first couple of films, but I need a costume designer. I need, there are some things that are not my strengths, and I have to not be afraid to look for help that way. A lot of young people think they must write, but not so many directors are good at writing. And you have to accept that maybe you are not a good writer, good enough writer, and then you need to work with somebody. You need to learn to work with somebody. So it's really that kind of thing. And then if I wish I could be predicting where the film, I talked to somebody the other day who said that she went to an astrologist and asked about the future of cinema. And the astrologist said, I give it 5 years. And then it will be no more.
That's very accurate.
So, it's like, I know Steve Zaillian, and he made a series called Ripley, which I thought was terrific. It was real cinema. It was great. Based on very commercial novels in the past, of which many movies have been made, the Ripley series. That's a different kind of cinema. It's like 8 hours of cinema that he wrote and directed. very difficult. You have to devote 3 or 4 years of your life doing it, and then it's shown, and then it's gone. You know, so streaming is a whole different ballgame, and I've never made a streaming series. I know it would be really hard. I know that David Lynch was really wiped out by the series that he'd made, that revisiting Twin Peaks. It was 20 episodes that he wrote and directed himself. That's fantastic. That's very difficult.
Yeah.
So these are all things that, you know, and yet there's TikTok, there's access to cinema now. I mean, you could definitely make a movie on your iPhone, no question. It's been done. That was totally impossible when I was starting, you know. So a lot of the things that were important to me starting as a filmmaker don't exist anymore, you know. Other possibilities now exist. So I can only talk about them, but I can't really make recommendations, you know.
But you have to compose. If you want to start, you have to compose with all of that.
You have to do it.
Well, David, thank you very much for this conversation.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much.
And this is a great place. Invite me for dinner.
For sure.
Yeah, it'd be great. You could have a lot of people here.
Thank you.